Hello, everyone. I am Susie Shannon with the Justice for Renters Act. And today, July 27th, marks the official date that the Justice for Renters Act has qualified for the November 2024 ballot. Over 601,000 valid signatures were submitted, and today the Secretary of State is certifying us for the November 2024 ballot. So we're all very excited to mark today. Obviously, we know that rents are too high in California, and the time has come to lift the partial ban on rent control and ease the suffering of millions of renters facing skyrocketing rents. The Justice for Renters campaign is made up of a strong coalition, as you can see here today, of labor unions, housing justice organizations, senior and veteran groups, and civil rights organizations, all coming together to say enough is enough. It's time for California to vote yes on rent control. I am very, very proud to bring up our first speaker, Dolores Huerta, who is a civil rights activist, founder of the Farm Workers Union, and has been part of every important social justice movement in California and throughout the nation. Dolores Huerta, if you could please kick us off.
Yes, I'm very proud to be here today, and I do want to congratulate the AIDS Foundation, Michael Weinstein, and all of your organization for being so persistent in making sure that we can stay on this, important issue. Sorry about that. And thank you for not giving up, and thank you again for doing all of the work that you've done, because you've been out there for the unsheltered now for so many years, and taking the steps to prevent people from becoming homeless. And we know that this initiative will go a long way, and we need to get everybody on board. We need to get everybody out there to make sure that all of the voters understand why it's important and why we need them to vote to make sure that this initiative passes. We have seen the unsheltered, the numbers have been growing higher and higher and higher. We expect that they're going to go, we're going to have more homeless because so many of the so-called rent protections that they were supposed to receive were never delivered. And we know we have some very heartless people on the other side. They're going to be spending a lot of money to defeat this measure. That means that all of us have to really do the best that we can, get out there, organize everybody that we can, so that we can hit the voters, hit the streets, make sure that everybody votes to make sure this initiative passes. Si se puede, yes, the rents are too damn high. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolores. We're going to move now to Yesenia Miranda Mesa, who is a renter and also the co-founder of Pomona United for Stabilized Housing.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I echo what, one of our civil rights activists, Dolores Huerta, has said, that this has, it's a lot of years that we've been working for this. And even then, so many people are being evicted. Our court system is backed up right now with so many evictions, and it has to do with partially the 10% rent increase. People just simply can't afford that, especially people on a fixed income. We're talking about our senior population. We're talking about our disabled folks. We're talking about, people that simply just don't have the money to be able to pay a 10% increase. For some people that do have the income, that 10% may not mean anything, but for a single parent that has children, that 10% is gas money. It's formula, it's diapers, it's living essentials that we need in order to survive. And the fact that we have been fighting so many years just to get the simple protections that we need is very unfair to our society as a whole, because this is a national crisis. It's just not a county, it's just not a city, it's just not a state. We're on a national crisis right now. And the fact that we had COVID protections, that was due to safety. As we can see, we have a safety issue at hand. The rent is too damn high. We simply can't afford it. We need help now. And the Justice for Renters Act is part of the solution to the big problem that we have, but it will move us forward in what we're trying to do to protect our tenants. So again, rent is too damn high, and we need rent control, and we need it now. We needed it 5 years ago. Let's just be real. The fact that you know, the real estate companies are putting in so much money to go against these initiatives that we have put forward. Is the lobbying and the money that's going against us is unfair, and we need help. And we need the voters to understand that the Justice for Renters Act is a protection that they need, and we need to vote yes on this. So I'm very excited to be part of this movement, and thank you everybody and everybody in our coalition that you know is moving forward to fight this injustice. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Yesenia. Ada Briseño is the co-president of Unite Here Local 11. We are so excited to have her and her union as part of our coalition. Ada?
Good morning, everyone. Unite Here is super excited to hear that that Justice for Renters Act qualified in the ballot. Unite Here represents about 32,000 workers employed in hotels, restaurants, airports, sports arenas, and convention center. For the last month, thousands of cooks, dishwashers have been striking in over 43 hotels. Workers have had enough. We're striking due to the high cost of living, and our wages are not sufficient anymore, as you've heard. We've been striking, many of our members are the working poor. They live paycheck to paycheck. They're couch surfing. They're living in their cars and struggling to pay rent. Many of them have pushed out of their communities and now have long hours of commute. The Justice for Renters Act allows local government to expand rent control and provide much needed relief to low-income tenants, including our members. Unite Here Local 11 joins with the California Nurses Association, Congress member Maxine Waters, our beloved Dolores Huerta, local elected officials, seniors, veterans, and housing justice organizations in support of the Justice for Renters Act. We will work hard to ensure that voters support the Justice for Renters Act. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ada. Brian Tibetabe is the Vice Mayor of West Covina. Brian, are you on?
Yes, thank you for having me here. It's such an important policy that we passed to get rent control across the state. Just last week, I received an email from an elderly couple that saw their rent increase 10%. So it's an elderly couple on a fixed income that's reaching out to the city asking, how can we stay in our apartment? We recently lost 5 teachers from the West Covina Unified School District, young teachers who have to live in the Inland Empire because the rents are too high in West Covina. I don't know how you can have a community that doesn't allow for the people who work in the community, who make the community thrive, not be able to afford to live in the community. You know, as a proud member of CTA, my wife, a proud member of UTLA, you know, we struck for 3 days in order to make sure our cafeteria workers, our support staff in LAUSD got a pay raise, but a pay raise that is not going to match the increase in rents, right? And so we had to strike for 3 days just to stay poor. Again, we need rent control. We need it now. We need for the rents to come down because the rents are too damn high. If you work in a community, you should live in a community. And that's what we're fighting for. It's a great day to know it's on the ballot. Now we got to do the great work to make sure that this time we pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Our next speaker is the founder of Veterans Voices and also the chair of the Veterans Caucus for the California Democratic Party, Basil Kimber.
Last time when I spoke to all of you, those same streets, I was nervous because those same streets is where I lived for a long, long time before I became a national chef. And so I had mixed emotions because one of the things that I did not tell you, and I said I would tell you once I turned 70, and I turned 70 a couple of weeks ago, a lot of us military people who, when we go to apply for, rent and stuff like that, sometimes they don't approve us because of the trauma we've had. Let me give you an example. I have formally announced that I'm a MST. For those who don't know what MST is, military sexual trauma, which happened to me in boot camp. So the whole world found out a couple of days ago, besides me and homeless, I kept that a secret for 50, 60 years. And the reason why I'm publicly saying it now to everybody, because I went to a couple of friends and they tried to get rid. And then when the owners found out what was wrong with them, they booted them out. So I'm saying, well, wait a minute. We were sick. We needed help. You know, and a lot of us were already on a fixed income. Why are you hassling us? Because in our military time, we had different, you know, we had problems. Like I had problems. Thankfully, I had good people to help me. The Justice for Renters is something that I've been with them from the very beginning. And it's because of my belief in Michael and Susie that I look forward to going out. We right now go out to 59 million people daily. In California, we go to like 6 or 7 million. But the veterans need to know, if you would come with me one day, I will take you and show you and let you hear from them. I hope the press, let them sleep with us. Let them, I'm not currently homeless now, but they need to understand how we feel in regards to why we support justice for renters. People are getting kicked out every day. As being the chair now, I want to be clear. I'm speaking not as the chair right now, so I'm taking my chair hat off. I'm not speaking as the chair because as the chair, we cannot endorse from the party, but as the chair, the founder of Veterans Voices, I can. And so a lot of us veterans, we don't have that much money, and it's hard for us to get our money. It's hard for us to get medical, and it's hard for us to get our what we call back pay. So if we don't get our back pay, you know what the renters do is say, hey, you don't pay today, you gone. It used to be they give us 30 days. They don't even do that no more. They give us 3 days, 3 days. And then on the third day, they say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll let you stay, but we're gonna up the rent. What type of shit? Oh, I'm sorry, what type of crap is that? So I just want to end by, I'm thankful for Michael and Susie and for Justice for Renters. And we're gonna kick these MF asses. We are this time. I am so enthused. And Veterans Voices, we stand behind you 100%. And again, as I said earlier, I want to thank Dolores, because when I cried that day, she held my hand afterwards and said, God bless you in your story. Susie told me the same thing. In fact, they even got me a Uber to go back to the convention. So I'm humbled and honored. Justice for renters. Huh!
I'd like to bring up Constantine Anthony, who is the mayor of Burbank.
Hi, Susie. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for putting this together and for doing the hard work of qualifying for the statewide ballot. We know that that is a huge lift, California being the most populous state and having the most voters. There is such a disconnect with the average renter and the current real estate market in this country. Why is it in California that an apartment built in 1992 can be under rent control, but apartment built in 2002 can't? It doesn't make much sense. It really doesn't. And most folks don't understand that when they're renting a single family home, they're exempt from a lot of the protections allowed someone living in even a duplex. You know, when Costa-Hawkins was originally written, nobody could fathom the idea of someone even renting a single family home. They thought, oh, homes were for purchasing. But since 2008, large capital investment groups like Blackstone bought up all of the single family homes in California because they knew they were exempt from rent control. So we've got a lot of issues in the state with regards to affordable housing, with regards to rent increases. The issues we're dealing with now and that we're fighting for is going to affect generations to come. We need to be able to let people age in place, to let people raise their kids in the cities and towns that they come from. And I'm very excited to campaign and vote and get my friends to understand why this measure is so important at the statewide level. So again, thank you, Susie, and to everybody else for doing the work and getting out there, and I'm happy to support.
Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up Carlos Aguilar, who's an organizer with Coalition for Economic Survival.
Hi, thank you, Susie. Hi, everyone. We're happy that Justice for Renters campaign is kicking off, and third time's the charm, definitely. We need to stop the idea that profit motive just for profit's sake is the end all be all. We need to make sure that we listen to what the community needs, and profit, the endless pursuit of profit does not undermine our community and the roots that we've all built in the community, and folks are able to live, grow, play in the communities that they've had these great experiences, built their lives around, have their social networks. So we need to ensure that that is key to our message, key to the community, because that is what's at stake and has always been at stake. Now it's ever more present because everything is going up, all the prices are going up, but incomes are not keeping up pace with that. So it's putting a greater strain on those who have more limited means, and that's the fight we're gonna take to the state now, and we're ready for it alongside you all.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Ryan Bell, who is an organizer with Pasadena Tenants Union, I think is ready now.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Ryan Bell. I'm an organizer with the Pasadena Tenants Union, and I'm also an organizer with the Tenants Together in Southern California. We're so excited to see this measure qualify for the ballot. More excited than ever that the appetite for this type of reform is growing in the state of California, and that this is going to be the year that we get this done. We, with a lot of support from Housing as a Human Right and others, passed a local rent control ordinance, a charter amendment actually in the city of Pasadena where I live last November. And we're really just overjoyed about the ability to begin to protect renters. We've started up the rent board there where I'm the chair of the rent board, and requests for help are starting to flood in through our email address, and city officials for the first time in many cases are seeing just the scale of the problem. People are overwhelmed by the volume of emails that are coming in. And I keep telling them, it's been like this for decades. You're just now hearing about it for the first time through this new program. But unfortunately, there's still so many people that we're prohibited from helping and protecting because of Costa-Hawkins. Also in my work with Tenants Together, I'm working in a lot of small cities. For instance, later today, I'm going to be speaking to a city council committee in the city of Perez in Riverside County, where about 80% of the tenants in that city rent single family homes. So even if they pass local rent control, the vast majority of their community is exempt from those protections. In cities like Santa Barbara and even Pasadena, there's a huge number of tenants who aren't renting apartments. They're renting single family homes or ADUs or some other type of housing that was either recently built or is otherwise exempt currently. So we need this repeal of Costa-Hawkins urgently, as people are just being priced out of their homes. The rent is too high, the protections are too few, and real estate capital is taking advantage of working families. People, as you heard from Unite Here and others in the labor movement, people are being squeezed on both sides, at work and at home. And we need more tools to protect people from this type of rent gouging and profiteering. And really excited to support Justice for Renters this election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I'd like to bring up Marty PerezRubiz, who is with the California Democratic Party Renters Council and the Central Valley Empowerment Alliance.
Thank you, Susie. The rent is too damn high. I represent the California Democratic Renters Council represents 18 million renters in California. We have seen an influx of increases of evictions and homelessness throughout the state. The pandemic and our climate change, the fires have elevated a warning to our communities, specifically rural communities that lack the infrastructure to address their housing crisis. Justice for renters is absolutely necessary in order for us to be able to address California's housing crisis. I'm here today on behalf of California Democratic Renters Council, but I also want to speak for renters throughout California. Paloma Vares, who is a Navajo, who lost her employment during the pandemic and now lives along the Tule River. And when the water was released along the river, she was asleep and the water took her. She almost lost her life. She continues to live there. Humberto Ortiz, he works for Amazon, earning $16 an hour. He lives in Delano and works in Visalia. And he has a family of 9. And he was evicted from his home because he was not able to pay the high rents in Tulare County and Kern County. So he right now currently lives in a motel, a 1-bedroom motel, and he was forced to send 2 of his children out of state in order to be able to possibly qualify for housing. I also want to talk about, Vicky and Hilario and 2 elders, farm workers. They're already in their 70s and are not able to work in the fields as they used to. And they had to deal with housing that is not habitable. Many communities throughout the Central Valley, throughout California, are determined to be communities with no future. Some of our housing elements, including the one in Tulare, defines 15 rural communities as communities with no future, and there hasn't been any infrastructure done since the 1970s. So we see us as Justice for Renters Act as a means to be able to address to the root of the problem. We believe that conservative communities like in the Central Valley should be supportive of this, because this takes away the big government and allows our communities to make decisions for itself, to be able to address its issues and bring forth justice, to our rural communities. We are proud to support, and we're going to be working hard on the ground to ensure that renters obtain the justice that is well deserved. So one of the things that I also want to highlight is that this is only a tool for us to begin to address, but obviously as a tenant organizer, we believe that we need to prevent the bleeding of homelessness and displacement, but we also need to address, preserving existing dwellings, as well as, increasing affordable housing in our communities to be able to fully address California's housing crisis. But this is a huge step. Both steps are needed, and this is one, and we are willing to lead to make sure that California gets the justice it needs, its renters.
Thank you, Marty. I'd like to bring up Michael Weinstein, president of AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
I'm very proud that AIDS Healthcare Foundation is playing a leading role in bringing this to the ballot. This is the housing is the #1 social determinant of health. And secondly, we know that the real estate industry is going to spend $100 million to try to confuse people. So I just want to be clear. We made an extra effort this time around to keep it really, really simple. What this initiative says, and nothing else, is that the state may not limit the right of any city or county to maintain, enact, or expand rent control. That's what it's all about. I want to say also that, people in Sacramento seem to be in denial about the fact that the root cause of homelessness and housing affordability is that the rent is too damn high. And that, if we don't do something, we're in a doom loop. With population falling and more people in need being supported by fewer and fewer workers as people flee the state. This is way overdue. So I'm so happy to see this amazing coalition put together. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Dan Cobb, who is an Oakland City Council member. Dan?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My, my name's Dan Cobb, Oakland City Council member. I am absolutely thrilled that this ballot measure appears to have qualified for the state ballot next year. We've tried before, and now we need to try it once again. Local jurisdictions, every city in the state, or almost every city in the state, and counties as well, need to have the tools to be able to protect their residents, stop displacement, reduce homelessness, and serve the population, serve the constituents of their communities. And Costa-Hawkins does not let us do that. It gets in the way of that. This ballot measure does nothing more than just bring back local control when it comes to setting rents and helping to reduce displacement for all the residents who are renters. And many residents are renters in our state because it's so expensive to buy a house anywhere, almost anywhere. So I'm thrilled this is about to be on the ballot. There's a broad coalition, a growing coalition to support this. I know the residents of Oakland will overwhelmingly support this, but we need people up and down the state to help bring back control of deciding these things, deciding these measures, deciding these policies to the local level, so we can protect our residents, reduce displacement, curb homelessness, and really prevent the rent from getting too damn high for so many people. I'm thrilled to be here, happy to be part of this growing coalition, and let's get this onto the ballot and let's vote in favor of this next November. And thanks so much for all the work everybody's doing, and we got more work to do. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to bring up John Nolte, Pomona City Council member.
Hi, everyone. John Nolte on the Pomona City Council. I'm just, I echo everything that Mr. Cobb just said about local control and our need to have the tools to protect our residents. In Pomona, about a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago, we passed an emergency rent control measure. The City Council is sees this need that we're losing people from the city of Pomona in droves because they simply can't afford the rent. We have a focus in the city right now due to our mayor, Tim Sandoval, on youth and children and Tay youth in particular. We know that when people are displaced, the trauma that youth suffer because of that displacement is tremendous. I work in school systems, and I can tell you that when youth have to move in the middle of a school year because they've been evicted out of their homes, because their parents can't pay the rent, it just causes tremendous problems that ripple throughout their lives. Pomona is a city that is doing really well in lots of ways. We're improving our parks. We're bringing more youth activities. We're improving the relationship with the police. We're doing lots of good things. But if we can't allow the renters in our city to stay in our city, those who have been here for years, who put their blood, sweat, and tears into our city, then what's the point of everything else that we do? We need the tools to control the rent so that the people in Pomona have a right to stay. And we will be fully supporting this measure. Thank you so much to the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and Housing is a Human Right for getting this through.
Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up Ernie Powell, President of Social Security Works. Ernie, did we lose you? Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to him. Okay, I'd like to bring up Sally Alpert, who is a Berkeley Rent Board member.
Hello, my name is Sally Alpert. I'm the vice chair of the Berkeley Rent Board. And, in my time on the Rent Board, one of my biggest frustrations has been that instead of working with the state to protect renters in Berkeley, we've been continuously having to find ways to work around the state to bring protections to Berkeley renters. And, California is a renter state, and we have a landlord legislature. And so instead of, a lot of legislators and landlords in Sacramento talk about the housing crisis and how all the things they want to do to protect people and make housing more affordable. And yet here we have this measure, this law, Costa-Hawkins, the only purpose of which is to handcuff our local jurisdictions from actually bringing protections to tenants. And so the reason we have this ballot measure here, and the reason I'm so excited that this ballot measure has qualified, is because we need to go around the landlords in our legislature, in our capital, to really bring justice to tenants and make sure that our state laws work for the many, the tenants in our state, and not the few who are profiting off of their backs. So, we've been here before. I know we're going to keep fighting to make sure that we can overturn this unjust law and really protect as many tenants as we can in our state and throughout our communities. And I also know that on the same November 2024 election, when we're going to overturn Costa-Hawkins, we're going to pass ballot measures up and down the state, bringing rent control to more jurisdictions, more cities in our community. So I'm so thankful for all the work that has got us here, and I look forward to all the successes in our future.
Thank you, Sally. I'd like to bring up
Susie,
Erica Leslie, our Berkeley Rent Board member.
Susie, this is Jed. I just wanted to ask, we have a couple of questions from reporters, and I just wanted to know, what is the process? Are you taking questions at the end, or?
We only have a few more speakers, and then we'll take questions at the end. Erica, are you ready?
Yes. I just want to say that I am so glad that this passed. This is not just a housing crisis. This is a health crisis. This is something that's truly needed to protect our seniors, our veterans, our children, as we see families and single mothers out on the street. This is something that is so dire for our economy and for our state, as millions of people are moving out of the state because it's just simply, the rent is just too damn high. I thank you for putting this forward, and everyone go out and vote and pass this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Ernie Powell, who is the president of Social Security Works, representing our seniors up and down California.
Well, it's certainly a pleasure to be here. And I will tell you that I just want to say that I started looking for an apartment someplace else in Los Angeles County. And there wasn't a part of LA County that I could afford. And I'm doing pretty well. I have a pension, I have a salary, and I have Social Security. So just as one case in point, there is not an apartment that I could afford in this community. Number one. Number two, we know that seniors are particularly vulnerable. We know that some are on a single income, which is their Social Security. And this, particularly in the Central Valley, but other parts of California, this will protect them so that they're secure in their homes because the rent is too high. Right now, 12.1% of all seniors in California are poor. And the other thing they're facing is that 1 million people nationally have lost their Medicaid because they didn't re-enroll after COVID was done. So as we all add that up, I'll add this up, Social Security Works, which has 350,000 members in California, is going to be really behind this to protect seniors, to protect their families, to protect their grandchildren. Okay, so we're there for you, and we will do everything we can to tell our members to vote, tell our members and seniors all over California to vote yes on this amendment.
I'd like to bring up the former mayor of Santa Monica and the co-chair and co-founder of Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights, Denny Zane.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Michael. You folks are heroes in the minds of all renters. We look forward to this marvelous measure passing this year and creating the opportunity for housing justice in all of our communities. Santa Monica is one of the communities that adopted rent control early on, back in 1979. So we had 20 years of rent control without Costa-Hawkins, and we have since had 24 years of rent control after Costa-Hawkins. And the contrast couldn't be starker. About 1/4 of our units are long-term tenants who have not vacated the units, who are still under rent control as it was envisioned before Costa-Hawkins. Their median rent is less than $1,100 a month. For all those tenants who are in units that became vacant since Costa-Hawkins, the median rent is $2,600 a month. Dramatic increase. If you were to go now and look for a units that are on the market right now and vacant, they would be closer to $3,500 a month. This is a community, Santa Monica was a community with more than 40% of our renters were low income when we started. And now it is a very much smaller part of our renter population. And the rest of the population in the vacancy decontrolled units and in the homeowner units are increasingly higher and higher income. The way it is now, this is just, state law is simply a prescription to phase out rent control all together in a community as time passes and people move and people die. And that's just not where you create housing justice in California. Thank you so much for bringing this measure forward to the voters of California. We look forward to working with you to make sure it passes this time.
Okay, while she is not speaking, I do want to recognize that we also have Sue Himmelrich on the line, who is also a former mayor of Santa Monica. I'd like to bring up Alan Minsky, who is president of Progressive Democrats of America.
Oh, thank you so much, Susie. And I mean, let me just say, 88, there we go. You tricked me there, Susie. PDA is going to do everything we can to support this measure up and down the state with all of our members and all of our, and we're gonna really highlight this nationally and really bring in national support. Along those lines, I want to echo something Constantine said a little while ago. You know, since 2008, 2009, global capital has been so invested in rent taking, and California is, of course, on the front lines of this. And I think we have to lead the way and show the rest of the country and the rest of the world that people can stand up against this egregious profit-taking, rent-taking that is taking place across the world in population centers across the world, making them unaffordable for working people. And I think we're going to win this thing. I think the people are with us so much. We're going to have a ton of money arrayed against us, but let's bring all our energy together and we can win this thing. I just want to thank Michael and Susie so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Representing the Central Coast, Esther Malkin from Monterey County Renters United.
Hi, everybody. This is such a great group of people getting together for such an important cause. I wanted to bring up something that isn't really talked about that often. Right now, all of our elected officials and jurisdictions are talking about meeting their RHNA goals. That's all they're talking about, building and building in the future, and they are completely refusing to address the simple fact that they cannot build fast enough for our rents to be stabilized. We have to bring into the conversation of, quote, affordable housing, that rent has to be addressed simultaneously to all this building conversation. And it might not be as fun and sexy to talk about, you know, affordable rents as it is to build new projects and have more properties that developers can make money off of and property management companies can make money off of. But we have got to force that conversation on our elected officials and the candidates. It is really important to put them on the spot with that, because they talk about affordable housing, but we've got to get them past the conversation of RHNA. We have to talk about the AB 1482 exclusions. We've got to focus on the fact that, you know, we've got, in my county, it's a huge county. We go from having very expensive homes in Pebble Beach and hospitality in Monterey, the city of Monterey, to farm workers, you know, a couple of miles inland that are putting food on everybody's table. And we've actually had a couple of instances locally that the owners of the farms have been housing farm workers in deplorable conditions. And these are the things that happen when we don't have enough housing for everybody. So thank you to everybody that spent all the time and effort on doing this. And I really look forward to it passing this time, because I think we've got much more traction and we are motivating the renters to come out and vote. And without the renter vote in a lot of these jurisdictions, candidates just cannot win. And I can use the city of Monterey as a perfect example of it. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Moving to the Topanga Mountains, I'd like to bring up Dorothy Wright, President of Progressive Democrats of the Santa Monica Mountains.
Of course, Progressive Democrats of the Santa Monica Mountains support this bill wholeheartedly. We will work as hard as we can to get this passed. I want to remind all of us, I'm a homeowner, but all of us homeowners need to realize that we are one health issue or one environmental disaster away from being renters ourselves. We can't sit back and say, well, I've got my fixed rate mortgage, so I don't need to worry about rent, because one day we might become renters. So we need to really get out and get the vote out and get this passed to protect ourselves as well as the current renters, because we could be renters any day. So the rent is too damn high, and we need to be sure that if we lose our homes, that we are able to rent.
Thank you, Dorothy. Next up is Cliff Pasner from Americans for Democratic Action, Southern California.
Well, Americans for Democratic Action applauds the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and Susie and Michael for finally, for getting this on the ballot. And we are striving to build a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. And a major obstacle to that happening is that here in California, we have such a huge population of unhoused people, and even more Californians who are just 1 or 2 paychecks away from becoming homeless themselves because they're just trying to grapple with unaffordable rents. So and then we watch in horror as private equity firms buy more and more of California's housing stock, which is further stressing the most vulnerable among us. We realize this ballot measure, the Justice for Renters Act, will inspire apartment owners association and developers to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on an advertising campaign to convince people to vote against something that's so crucial to the public good. But we're not going to accede anything to this greedy special interest. The Justice for Renters Act finally restores local government's ability to enact rent control. It restores democracy to a process that hasn't had democracy in it for many years. And we in Americans for Democratic Action are all about democracy. So we will be fighting with all our energy to pass the Justice for Renters Act. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to ask Art Rodriguez from the Central Valley Empowerment Authority to bring us home.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Michael. You're doing. When I got the news, I couldn't help but to hold back some of the tears that were coming out of my mind because I was thinking about it. I was thinking about Sophia. I was thinking about Edgar. These are some of the kids who come into our facilities to ask for some food because the parents' time, putting in overtime, and they still can't find it to where they not only are able to pay for the rent, but and then seeing the families that come in here every day asking for help. I'm getting evicted, or I have nowhere else to be, or I'm getting kicked out of being in the rivers. I couldn't help but to pick up the phone call this morning and let her know that finally, we're taking this to the ballot. We'll have the opportunity to really put power back into the people and allow us to fight, bring that local control back to local government, and let us expand and enact rent control, especially here in the Central Valley, where most of our homes and people that are at risk of becoming homeless live in single-family dwellings. The reality is that this is way overdue. Our families matter, our communities matter. And I'm more than positive that in 2024, we will see a new law that allows for local governments to expand, protect the families and that are coming up. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Art. Okay, so that concludes our speakers for today. I just want to point out we have, again, a very broad coalition. We're very excited that we have organizations and elected officials representing, and supporting the Justice for Renters Act from across the state of California. Jed, I'm going to kick it to you. Jed, I'm going to kick it to you for press questions.
Great, thank you. So thank you, members of the press. We appreciate you bearing with us there. First up, I would go to Ben Oreski from the LA Times. Ben?
Hi, all. Thank you for doing this. A question, I guess, for Michael, and then if any others have thoughts, they're welcome to share them. Or just 2 questions very quickly. The first is, someone referenced this. The third time is the charm. What is going to be different this time? Both times you've lost in pretty sizable ways. What do you think will be different this time? How will you be handling it differently? Will you be putting more money in? And what do you think it says if you lose a third time?
Well, others can respond. I'll say, first of all, that I've been fighting for needles exchange for 35 years, okay? It's no less valid now than it was 35 years ago. And the reality of the matter is that the reason why we have to take this to the ballot is that renter protection legislation goes to Sacramento to die. And we have no hope of getting it through the legislature, which is controlled by the CAA. by the California Apartment Association. And I mean, the press loves to make everything into a horse race, right? Talk about it that way. But we're a grassroots movement. That's what this press conference demonstrates today. And you know, we're going to devote the resources that we can. You know, I think the main reason why we have a better chance now is that the situation has gotten so extreme and dire and catastrophic. I mean, you know, rates of homelessness are going up, affordability. I mean, it just, where are people going to live? I mean, that's the question, you know, and the population of California is shrinking and the California dream is dying. I mean, I think that we can never give up. That's the bottom line. We can never give up. You know, it's almost a majority of people now in California are renters, whereas that was not the case before. I mean, I think we're going to fight to win. That's our intention. We can't determine the outcome when you've got $100 million against us. And if we, you know, we'll do it again if we have to, and again and again and again. Because the bottom line is that this is the root cause of the homeless and affordability crisis in California, and it is the root cause of the general crisis in the way of life that we have. And lastly, I'll just say is that the state of California has thrown $20 billion at homelessness, and it went up, right? So if you don't get to the root cause of this, nothing is going to make a difference. There's no amount of money that is going to compensate for the fact that an average apartment in Los Angeles costs more than what a minimum wage worker earns, and that a person on disability who's getting $1,100 a month has no place to live.
Yesenia, you have a comment?
I do. Thank you, Benjamin, for the question. I think that we all have to keep in mind that COVID highlighted a lot of things, especially when people started losing their jobs. And there's such a large population that felt that hit when they lost their jobs. If the funding for the renters wasn't there, how many more people, if that ERAP money funding was not available, how many more people would have been homeless? There are so many people after COVID that just experienced that blow and that hit, that they were living maybe 3 paychecks out versus paycheck to paycheck, but they felt that hit. And that's the big difference from in previous years that we put it out to this coming year. And during COVID, we didn't have the accessibility to try to get the signatures, try to get the votes that we needed. But for me, that's where the highlight comes in, is the fact that, you know, so many more people are experiencing this, especially like I said before, our senior population, disabled people, the people that are on this fixed income. This is crucial for those individuals. So just keep those things in mind, Benjamin, that, you know, third time is a charm. So many more people are aware. So many more people are feeling this hit. Inflation also hit everyone. There's partially no more middle class anymore. You're either rich or you're poor. So, you know, and we're feeling it.
Solly Alpert, you had a comment as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, to the question, what did it say? What will it say? We lost twice before. What will it say if we lose again? First of all, I think we're going to win. But, you know, what has it said is our campaign finance system is broken. Right? The industry in the state can buy its own regulations. We saw the same thing with Uber and Lyft buying their own labor regulations, and the landlords will buy their own housing regulations. If you ask voters in the state, if you ask the residents of the state, they support tenant protections, they support rent control. But when they are subject to lies and millions of dollars of lies about a specific ballot measure, it can be difficult to keep up, but we are going to fight to make sure that people know the truth, that these protections are for the average Californian, that the people funding the opposition are the wealthy who are preying on them.
Carlos Marroquin, did you have a comment also for the reporter's question for Jeremy's question?
Yes, thank you. The fact of the matter is, people are in a really, really dire situation right now. Every single report that is coming out says the same thing. That is because of the high cost of rent. Change comes from the ground up. And this is what's going to make a big difference this time around. because we are pretty much fed up. We talk to people on the ground, to families, to individuals that are struggling, that are scared to death, that are on food lines waiting for food because they cannot afford to even put food on their table. The time has arrived. This is the time that we're going to see big change, because the movement that we are seeing with justice for renters is from the ground up. Thank you.
All right, Dorothy Wright, and Dorothy, we're going to then go to some of the other questions after your comment. Thank you.
I just want to say the media has a responsibility in this. The media has not been covering homelessness in a way that helps. They just show what's going on, and they do not cover the solutions. They only cover the problem, and they cover the failures, but they do not help us pass legislation or pass bond issues or an act like this in order to help people. They're busy just making headlines, and a lot of the problems in this country, as a matter of fact, are caused by the way the media covers the news and what's happening in this country and in the world.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on now to a question from Ben Christopher from Cal Matters. Ben, thank you for your patience.
Sure. Thanks to everyone for taking the time to do this. So I guess this is a question again for Mr. Weinstein, which is you said something about how you made an extra effort this time to keep things really simple, just to counteract some of the opposition messaging that you're sure to get and that you got in the past 2 cycles. So does that mean that this measure is substantially different in some way from Prop 21, or was that a reference to the messaging specifically? And if the latter, I'd be curious to hear about that. Thanks.
Well, I won the battle against the attorneys this time around. Who wanted, whereas and wherefore, and in case of this eventuality. And I said, maybe we'll have to deal with that later, but in the meantime, the other side with their $100 million picked apart every single specific thing the last time and turned it into something the opposite of what it was. And we just could not afford for that to happen. And also, a lot of the editorial boards and other people did the same. So now they're going to have to deal with the 23 words that are there, not the 1,000 words that were there before, and vote it up or down based upon on what it actually says.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jeremy White from Politico. Thank you again also for your patience. Question?
Hey, thank you everybody for making some time for us. A lot of you have talked about what you see as sort of the state's wrong-headed approach to housing by focusing on things like goals for building more housing, that type of thing. Jed, I know I've spoken to you a little bit about this, but AIDS Healthcare did give some money to a former version of that ballot initiative that would have prevented the state from sort of overruling locals on various zoning laws. Michael, is that something that you are interested in pursuing? I understand it's not AHF's, you're not the proponents, but is that something that you're looking into?
Well, I think we've already clarified to you that they had something on their website based on a contribution we made in 2021. So we are not endorsing that initiative. We have not contributed to it. So I think it's pretty much old news. I mean, I think it's well known that we are concerned about gentrification, and that we believe that tearing down affordable housing and replacing it with $1 million duplexes is not the answer. But it's not relevant to this conversation today.
Okay, we'll move on to Miranda from the East County Magazine, and then we'll circle back to Ben Oreski from the Times for a follow-up question. Oh, Ernie, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm watching just where I live here in the Gaylord, and every once in a while I actually walk the steps. Takes a while, and I breathe hard. I see so many vacancies here, and part of it is that food has gone up, transportation's gone up, et cetera, and the other thing is that we're going to be in a healthcare crisis because people are going to be thrown off their Medi-Cal. So my point is that one of the reasons why we're going to fight for this really hard is that seniors cannot find a place to live in California. It's just that simple. I mean, as I said, I'm 74, and I looked all over the state to move. And my apartment here, I'm only paying $1,300 a month. It's a single. It'll go up to 2,000. And I also want to thank Michael and Susie for putting this together, because it's very exciting, and Social Security Works California is going to be fully behind it. So that's my comment.
Okay, Esther has a comment.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to address what's going to be different this time. I think they're going to see a huge effort put towards getting the renter vote out. The renters traditionally have not been targeted by anybody to register them to vote, to make sure that they understand how they can't be scared into voting, by the commercials that they see on television, by the outside of, the state. They come in, the money comes in from outside of the state, and it uses scare tactics. This time around, there's going to be a huge effort to concentrate on the renter vote and getting them out. And I can tell you that it works. In the city of Monterey, last election, we elected our first Black gay mayor that's a millennial, and we have our first Hispanic council member ever on our city council. And the ones before were all a bunch of white retirees that were all rental property owners. So it is getting the renter vote out is a significant way how we will do this, because we know they are almost half of our population.
Thank you, Esther. Miranda, welcome, East County Magazine. Again, thanks for your patience. Question?
Hi. So I was just wondering, this question is open to anyone, by the way, but what steps, whether locally or statewide, would you take after the act is passed?
Well, then no one will be covered by rent control who is not covered now the day after we win this election. It's up to the localities, and we have to organize the renters at the local level to enact rent control or to expand the current rent control laws that we have. I mean, one thing that people don't realize is that in the cities that acted to protect renters, they were punished by limiting it to the year in which it was enacted. So in LA, it's 78, right? In San Francisco, it's 79. I don't know what it is in Berkeley or Santa Monica, but the minimum that has to be done is to move it forward, right? To cover things that were built, in the last 40 years. I also just want to say too that I want to challenge the press to cover Blackstone, to cover, who is the gentleman who owns all that crappy Italianate stuff, Jeffrey Palmer, right? I mean, there's been so little coverage or focus on the corporate, takeover, and also, who's contributing to these campaigns, right? I mean, the highest paid person in the country, CEO, was Steven Schwartzman, right? And he's, saying that he's protecting the renters. I mean, I think that the coverage of these campaigns has been very slanted in that respect.
Konstantin, and then Susie. Konstantin?
For those of you who don't know how local government works, when you pass a local rent control ordinance, you are bound by the charter and the state to match your legalese, so to speak, with the state laws. So a lot of places that want to pass rent control have to put in a number of acceptances and exemptions under state law. So one of the things we have to do immediately after passing this is go through every single city that has a rent control ordinance and undo that language, because if we don't, then the exemptions and the allowances to cover single family homes, to cover apartments after 1995 or after 1978 in some instances, it's not going to happen. So we still have a lot of work to do. And like Michael said, passing this law doesn't give rent control to people in cities that don't already have rent control. So there's still a ton of work we have to cover across the state. And I will remind every single person in this room, AB 1482 sunsets at the end of the decade. So a lot of people who had some protections under AB 1482 are going to lose them by 2030. So we still have a lot to do statewide. We have so many small localities that need a lot of protections too. So the work continues.
And by the way, I might just jump in for a second. I apologize, other people's hands up, but they told us that 1482 was rent gouging, right? It was a rent cap bill. They said when they passed it, they said it was not rent control. Now they're trying to pass it off as rent control. But 10% a year is not rent control.
Susie?
Yeah, I just want to point out that activists up and down the state of California in various cities, Pasadena, Pomona, two of whom we've heard from today, Santa Ana, have really been working hard to pass rent control. But the issue is that they're restricted by Costa-Hawkins. That means any building built after 1995 is never going to be covered until this initiative passes and becomes law. So I think that there are lots of folks across the state who are already activated. And I think that after this passes, we'll go city by city to make sure that, we are able to expand rent control.
Thank you, Susie.
If I could just ask my question really quickly.
Yeah, yes.
I just to piggyback off what Ben was saying, I just, with a little more precision, am I correct in saying that this is much more like 2018, where like with Prop 10, which was a straight repeal of Costa-Hawkins and new language, versus 21, which was like changing things around the edges of it? Like, I just, for our benefit to explain this precisely, is that what's happening here?
I mean, I wouldn't agree with that characterization around the edges. The only difference was that we had made explicit there that we would exempt new construction for 15 years. That was the leading thing that the real estate interests with their $100 million obscured and made it sound like that was actually hurting people rather than helping them.
This measure simply allows local government to enact or expand rent control. That's it. Very simple.
Basil, you have your hand up? Did you have a comment, or is that from prior?
Yes, I did have a question. Well, I just want to make a fact. A lot of times, you guys, when a veteran that has low money, when they go to these places, they fill out the application, and then a month or two down the line, when the renter finds out that maybe he had a problem or has a arrest record or this, that, whatever it is, they come to them and they say, you know what? I need to up your rent because of this. And it's funny because the veteran already put that on the application. So it's like a scheme, a game, they kind of wait. Then they say, we want to up your rent. And then by that time they're out. And so that's why I believe in this as well, because it's going to stop all this bullshit, as we say, veterans say, yes, the justice for renters, and yes, it's going to help a lot of veterans as well, and other homeless people as well. So again, I just want to give it the thumbs up, and let's do this thing, as we say.
All right, Susie, I see your hand is up, and we're going to start to bring it to a close. Art, also, you had a comment?
Yeah. The fact is that hundreds and hundreds of people are becoming homeless every week, and there isn't enough government resources out there to make sure that that we're able to be fed, that we're able to take care of our health. It isn't. The fact is that Californians will have an opportunity to do something about it and bring justice to renters come 2024, and that's just the reality. This is one of the most simple acts that we can do. And I know that seeing the folks that are here today, this is going to be a big success come 2024. And thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody. I'm putting my contact information in the chat as well. For anybody on the press who have follow-up questions, I can connect you to folks accordingly. Susie, Michael, if either of you, or Susie, would you like to have the last word? Thank you all.
I would like to thank all of our coalition members for all of their incredible hard work. I think this is our third press conference now. And I think it's really your work that is fueling this and allowing this to be a huge grassroots movement in California. I'd like to thank Jed Kensla and Jackie and the communication staff for helping out, and our housing is a human rights staff as well. And on to victory.
Thank you all. And again, my contact information in the chat, but I'll give it here as well. 323-791-5526. 323-791-5526. Thank you.
Fight. Housing is a human right. Fight.
Housing
Housing is a human right.
Fight.
Fight.
Housing is a human right.